What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So Wednesday is going to be here, which means the new summit is now live here at Motorfest. With that, we are going to have the Ultimate Nitro, which, if you are wondering, yes, this is going to be an old Crew 2 item, so it isn't going to be new. We're then going to have the Ferrari 458 there in gold, 100,000 bucks and 100,000 XP. The next summit, though, is also going to be viewable. Once again, going to have an old Crew 2 item as a platinum reward. But looking at this summit is probably going to confuse some people, man. No, this is not going to be a typo as far as I do know. This is going to be 8 feats and 1 race. Isn't that kind of crazy, man? This is going to have 8 feats in it. Kind of interesting. Also kind of wondering how the scoring on this one's going to work because, if you have the right stuff on there, I would say some of them might be like, well, okay, well, if you don't do good on this one, then you're kind of cooked. But, looking interesting on that one. Besides that, guys, looking at the summit, though, this one, as y'all know, is going to have the Pro Racing modifier. So it's going to be cockpit view, no nitro, and also no speedometer and no mini-map and stuff. So basically, if you turn off your HUD in most racing games, that's how this is going to look. One thing, though, is I want to say right now is all 3 skills are not going to have the modifier. It's just going to be the 6 events, and they're all going to be slalom. So if you wanted to, you can literally use the same car in all of them, which is the 599 Evo. That's actually what I did because I was like, you know what, let me just throw on a half score breaker, and I would say that's going to be your best bet, guys. So we got 155,000 points on this one, and on the next one, I also got 155,000 points again. On the final one, got 157. To be honest, if you're running a half score breaker set, make sure you guys have skilled on all 7 of your gold parts, and slaloms and basically most of the skills are probably going to almost be brainless. Besides that, though, with all 6 events here, guys, again, it's going to have the Pro Racing modifier. So yeah, you're going to be in first person mode. I also did end up running manual. No pro settings as always on basically every single vehicle I run. So I kind of try to make it interesting. But running manual, though, in cockpit view is a tad interesting. This event here is going to be multi-vehicle. So basically, if you are wondering, all you do is you're going to pick between 2 different vehicles, which you're clicking on this one. I can show you guys this. You're going to have to use the 365, and once you select it, you're then going to have to use the 488 GT3. You're pretty much going to do 2 laps around the Hanauma racetrack, and besides that, that's honestly pretty much it. You pretty much go around it. Most players are going to be very familiar with this one. Once you guys get used to the vehicles and how they drive and stuff in first person, to be honest, it's not that bad. And I would say in some ways they're probably going to be fairly normal once you keep doing them, or at least you most likely practice. And then for the next one, though, you're once again going to have to pick a racing Ferrari. For this, guys, I did end up using the FXXK. This is going to be a 3-lap race again on Hanauma racetrack, and I would say a lot of players are probably going to be fairly familiar. The FXXK is great. The 599 Evo is going to be good. The 488 is also fairly decent. So you really can't go wrong with most of the cars you are going to have an option to use. Some of it might even be down to preference. I've always been a big fan of the FXXK, so I'm like, you know what, let me try it. For the next event, though, the other racing is going to once again be in a Ferrari, the F40 LM. This race is also going to be in the rain. It's actually pretty nice looking, I admit, not having the HUD active. And I would say even stock pro settings, the F40 handled pretty well. And I really don't think you actually have to run them unless you're probably shooting for like the highest ranks. But to be honest, I really don't feel like doing that, and I'm probably going to take a guess and say a lot of players are probably not even going to bother with this summit. For the next one down here, though, this is now going to move over to the road. So for this event, I did end up using the 599 XX Evo. This is also going to be the 911. I think it's the highway race that you have to use a 911 on. Pretty much everybody has done it, and we all do know that most of the other summits have also had this event. So I would say as long as you guys can get around those corners. Again, there's not going to be Nitrous, which is funny because one thing I kind of noticed not using Nitrous in this game, the cars really do feel kind of slow. Like, you're really not getting the full power out of them, and you can kind of tell that they really do rely on the Nitrous. And I could say probably some players might not like that. Before this one, though, pretty much don't hit stuff. Who would have thought, right? Like, go around the corners at the right angles, keep your speed up, and you should be pretty good to go on this one. Besides that, for the next one, though, you're going to have to use the 599 XX Evo. This race, once again, I really feel like a lot of the events in here. Now, this one I got 102,000 points. I probably could go in and do a tad better, guys, but to be honest, I really don't feel like doing that. I do think the 99 Evo is actually pretty dang good. It's probably one of the more fun vehicles to drive, at least when it does come to being in a cockpit view in a racing vehicle, am I right? The final event here, though, you are going to have to use the 488 GT3 again. Or again, as in if you were using this car in a different race, then you're probably going to have to run this vehicle in this one, at least if you want to. This is going to be one of the newer Red Bull events, though, so do be prepared for a lot of turns in it. And I gotta admit, the 488 GT3 with regular Pro settings on it, man, I'm gonna be real. It honestly does not feel all that great. I feel like having this car with regular settings on it, the car likes to oversteer, it kind of like slides a bit. And I really do get a bit annoyed when cars like sliding and stuff like that, especially a race car. But hey, it is going to be base pro settings, so it's probably something you will have to trade for. Overall, though, I would say a lot of players are probably not going to be the biggest fan of this summit, and that is going to come down to the pro racing modifier. A lot of people are probably not going to want to be locked to the overall cockpit view, and I do feel like a lot of people might not be a fan of it. But the thing is, if you're not liking this one, I have a feeling once the manual summit comes, that one's probably going to get even more annoyance or hate, because a lot of people do not want to deal with this stuff. But if you guys have any questions, do let me know in the comments below. Let's jump right into this.